Good evening, welcome to the Board of Select meeting on December 10th at the Media Center at the high school. Tonight at 7 o'clock we'll have citizens input. At 7:05, chairman's update will be, Ms. Brew will do a update on the town manager selection committee instead of me doing it because she's been heading that. At 7:10, we had on the agenda discussion on citizens input. That's been stricken from the agenda. I have no idea why that was on there, either does Mr. Cutler. At 7:15, public hearing, application for George Strait Cowboy Rides Away concert at Gillette Stadium. By the way, John Gray's never even heard of George Strait. Shame on him. 7:30 p.m., Board of Selectmen application for change of manager of all alcohol restaurant for 99 Restaurant located at 4 Fisher Street. Ronald M. Lima, Jr. 7:45, Board of Selectmen Racino discussion. 8 p.m., Board of Selectmen outside meeting. 8:15 p.m., Bob Cutler, Cindy Delpina, Merit Pay Program. 8:30, Bob Cutler, Cindy Delpina, Gift Policy. 8:45, Board of Selectmen Splitsville discussion. 9 o'clock, Board of Selectmen Executive Session to discuss strategy regarding litigation matters, Splitsville and Welder Dutton case. Okay, Ginny, would you lead us in the pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, anybody here for citizens input? Please. And if anybody's here on citizens input for Splitsville, if you could wait till we have the discussion on Splitsville, unless you have to be somewhere, I'd appreciate it, because it's gonna be a discussion on it, and then we can rebuttal instead of, if you don't mind.
No, I guess that would be.
If you're gonna stay. If you're not gonna stay, you're more than welcome to speak.
Okay, no, and I also want to wish you all happy Thanksgiving and that we're still eating turkey from that huge turkey that was donated to my husband, who's a Vietnam era veteran. We didn't get very many thanks at that time, and it was fabulous having the kids come and knocking on our door, bringing a huge 20-pound turkey, so thank you very much.
You're welcome. Okay, anybody else?
Can I just ask one question? You are going to allow discussion?
Absolutely.
Okay, that's all I want to know. Thanks.
Okay, and we still have, Lorraine, please, the update on that.
Mark's
Oh, I didn't see you.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
I just wanted to tag, Stephanie McGowan, 19 Rose Lane. I just want to tag on a little bit. Maybe at some point, maybe not tonight, maybe Jim would be able to let us know how it all went. I did make a donation to the Touchdown Club and was thrilled to do it. My daughter was participated in the other food pantry, making the baskets and stuff, and it was wonderful. And all the stuff I heard was all really positive stuff, and I just wondered if maybe, if obviously not tonight, if it's not on the agenda, maybe sometime you can just give us a little feedback on how everything did go.
I mean, if we got a minute, I can put it under Chairman's update.
Absolutely. Why don't you do that first?
Yeah, I'll do that now. Thank you. It was a good, in my opinion, it was a good program. It was something that we kind of put together kind of on the fly. And we actually ran out of turkeys, had to buy more. So I won't tell you the numbers, but it was pretty successful. We had some generous donors. Mansfield kind of carried it at the beginning, and we kind of picked it up afterwards. And I think from that, I know there was one woman that had approached me with ideas for next year. They want to make scarves and cards and kind of grow it. So I know Doc Elfman, who runs the Foxborough Touchdown Club, is meeting tomorrow night with kind of the group and seeing what they want to do next year. If they want to pick it up, there's a bunch of parents and more importantly, juniors, seniors, sophomores that ran around and donated and made signs and cards. They want to participate next year. So I think it's going to grow. It'll be in Mansfield next year and hopefully in Foxborough the next year. But
Kids got a lot of it out of it.
they did, you know, and I think they delivered the turkeys, and it was kind of on a Friday night. And I think the biggest discussion was there was too much discussion. They went to the doors and they just kept talking and talking. And so I had asked, I'd given all the kids maps. And I learned that nobody wants paper maps anymore. They've got their cell phones, and they took care of it and came back, and there were no problems. So it was good. But thank you for bringing that up.
And I'm going to piggyback that and say, you know, the discretionary fund in the food pantry is put a lot together for Christmas, and it's been advertised in the paper. And if anybody can help out with donations for the needy families and kids, especially for this Christmas season, they would appreciate it. Okay. All right?
Okay. Just going to give a quick update on the status of the Town Manager Screening Committee. They had their first meeting yesterday with the consultants. We're working with consultants from the Collins Institute out of UMass Boston. And they had prepared a community profile for the town, which has been up for a while, and all of the applications were received just prior to the end of November. They received 34 applications, and a very strong pool of applicants was reported. I spoke with John Spinney, who's the chairman of the group, and he explained to me that they received 16 resumes and were provided with a review of the resumes and a high-level summary during an executive session yesterday. John said that the candidate pool is really good. They worked together and graded the candidate pool and picked the top 8 and have scheduled 2 evenings to interview 4 candidates each evening. And so right now that committee is working on developing the questions that they will be using for that interview process. But John said that it was a really good approach. He feels very good about the group and the approach that they're taking, so I know we're all looking forward to hearing the outcome of their review and their interviews. So we should hopefully hear something right around the holidays as to where they stand. And then once they do make a decision and make recommendations, then the Collins Institute will take the time to do the background checks and reference checks on the candidates that are being brought forward, and then they will be announced formally with us.
Great. Thank you.
Making really good progress with that.
Which just means Bob Cutler's days are numbered.
Thank God.
Could be a Merry
So on
Christmas.
yours, Mark.
Could be a Merry Christmas for Mr. Cutler. So, well, we still have 8 minutes of the public hearing. Do we want to go down to outside meetings, which we've been holding off for months? Okay. Who would like to start? Okay, I will.
Who put it on the agenda?
Well, it's been so long I've forgotten why. I mean, we've held it off so many times. But basically, it was just the board had a policy, basically the last board, Jim, I think it was all of us and Linda.
Okay.
And we discussed, we had outside meetings to come back and report to the board. And that came out, I think it was 2 years ago.
Okay.
And everything was to go through the chairman, or through the town administrator, or strong town manager. So that's all I wanted to remind everybody of a couple of months ago, just to make sure that we're all, because, you know, you've been working on child abuse policy,
prevention, yeah.
and I've been piggybacking that with you, so we kind of want to report back to the board on that. And so if you just tell the Bob or I what's going on, at least we're not reproducing the work, and you're keeping everybody informed. So,
Now, how far does that go? I mean, if you meet with some town residents, does that constitute an outside meeting?
no,
Okay.
not in my eyes.
Well-
Anybody else's?
Oh,
Go ahead, Jenny.
no, I mean, I started going to the water and sewer meetings, and my initial reason was because of the IMA,
Mm-hmm.
but it's so interesting. I just go every Monday to the water and sewer meetings, and I also attend the AdCom meetings. And so do you want a report of, you know, what happened? Or do,
No.
or would you want to have, like, as you, the chairman has the chairman's update, would you want to do like a selectman report, and then we can say, you know, I was at water and sewer and blah, 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 you know, John was at the reservoir meeting, and, you know.
I think that's a good idea, right off the top, instead of having chairman's update, because we've been sharing chairman's update anyways,
Yeah.
when we have a Board of Selectmen update.
Yeah.
Does that sound like a good idea?
Yes and no. I mean, I literally, dozens of meetings from residents to businesses to
Right,
proposed developers.
You don't
You know,
have to update everything. I'm just saying,
I
if it's
think
something you think
some
that
of the
could...
times the questions that come in are, you know, from your permitting experience, or what do you think the board is going to react, or is this a good idea? Doesn't warrant public discussion. It just
Mhm.
doesn't. If there's something that you're talking about that is eventually going to come in front of the board, And if you've got information from meetings, then I think you're kind of obligated to say, this is a discussion that I was part of, and let the board know that you participated in it. But, I mean, there's 5 people, and if everyone's
Right.
going to meetings, you're going to clog up a chairman's update with stuff
No,
that might not need to be
exactly my
brought
point. There's a
out.
lot of things we don't need to discuss in that, but absolutely, an entity that's a taxpayer in town proposing something, they call you as a board member to go see them, and they're gonna come in front of the board. I would definitely appreciate a report so that we're all up to date. That's exactly what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about small talk,
Right.
you know?
I mean, it's
Mark,
like
the
a-
better practice may be to put that on as an agenda, a separate agenda item, because you don't want to have something that's kind of vague and open here, and all of a sudden you're getting, talking about a very detailed item that really should be an agenda item so that people are aware what's going to be talked about that night. Just to stay within lines of the open meeting law,
So I guess basically, if you stay in touch with the chairman and Bob, no matter who the chair is in the future, it's very beneficial, because, you know, what last thing we want to hear is, and this, Frank had called me last week, and he said, do you know when the meeting is with the craft group? And I said, no, I don't. And I think it's tomorrow at 4 o'clock, but I don't know, because nobody's told me. So I just feel like, okay, I just got asked by a reporter, I don't know what's going on. You know, it's just to make sure,
Yeah.
it doesn't make me look silly either.
Right.
You know?
Well, you know,
so-
there could be circumstances also when like 3 selectmen show up for the same meeting
Right.
because they were interested in something like that. So I think at that point, I think that would probably be a good idea to say at the meeting, oh, by the way, 3 of us just happened to show up.
Right, like as in the raw milk
Well,
discussion, where
right.
us 3
Yeah.
showed up.
Yeah,
No,
and every so often, a number of the selectmen will go to the advisory committee meeting. We purposely do not sit beside each other. And
But Ginny, as long as there's no deliberations, is it
Right,
okay
you're
to
all
go
set.
and listen?
right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
as
that's
long as you're not deliberating and discussing and obviously making motions.
yeah, but there's also perception. 3 people in a room.
I think we started posting as a result of that, too. A joint,
Mhm.
you know, that we were having our own meeting at the same time. You know, one thing, I think a lot of this has to do with just trying to figure out how we can share information without violating open meeting law. And I know, you know, Bob and I had a meeting with an entity where I wrote up notes and, you know, that was provided for the packet. So I'm just thinking if there's any, you know, really significant discussions regarding development, I think personally it should always involve the town manager as part of that discussion with one of us. And then, you know, to just have some bullet points in our packet, I think just keeps everybody in the loop in terms of the general topics that were discussed, you know.
Yeah.
That-
I think
That
we're
way,
all,
that way I feel like, you know, I have shared what I was behind closed doors with
right.
an entity and Bob.
Okay.
So,
So it sounds like we're all on the same page, just make sure you update Bob and I, and then if it's something that needs, I think Bob's right, put it on the agenda. If it's something quick like tonight, those 2 items, there's no reason why that can't be on the chairman's update.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah, but it's still, and I'm not disagreeing, but when somebody comes in and says, I'm thinking of doing this, or here's some proprietary information, I've got a certain building I want to find, I want to bring an office or a dentist office or something, the minute it goes on the minutes and distributed to the board, it's public record.
Right. Well, the-
There's a balance that sometimes that's not the right thing to do, and it's
Right.
not that it's secretive,
Nope.
but I think it's a little bit of common sense. I mean, the first question I ask is, have you spoken to the other members about this? Because, you know, I don't want a serial meeting where a couple of people go and then another person, and then you end it with, this is my opinion, I don't speak for the board. But to go back and write up notes to distribute to 5 people to go become a public record, I think a lot of people won't approach us with ideas in thought process.
And you're right there, too, so, you know, the person that's meeting with you needs to know and let you know they want it kept private. They need to be told, the first question you should ask them, and I do ask that question, is this something you want me to share with the board? And they'll say no. It's, you know, and this is something I'm proposing, and I just wanted to reach out to you. So you just have to
But
make
I'd say
sure.
there's also, not special powers, but special obligations as the chairman. Certainly you can bring in discussion with either, like we've been doing with town council or with Bob Cutler, in brainstorming.
Yeah.
And I think that's the role of the chairman, to do stuff like that and not involve the board, unless, if in fact it comes back to the board, then you're obligated to say this is what was discussed.
Okay. All right. Moving on. Time for the public hearing. John, please. If you could read the notice.
The Board of Selectmen, acting as the local licensing authority pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 140, Section 181, and Section 183A, and Chapters 136, Section 4, Town of Foxborough Revised General Bylaws, Article 5, Section 6, and also Stadium Rules and Regulations, will conduct a public hearing on Tuesday, December 10th, 2013, beginning at 7:15 p.m. in the Foxborough High School Media Center to review the application submitted by NPS LLC for the George Strait Cowboy Rides Away concert. This event is proposed for Gillette Stadium. Application for this event is on file at the Office of Selectmen. All interested parties are welcome to attend.
Thank you. Hi, Jess.
Hi, how are you doing?
Good, yourself?
I'm well, thank you.
For the record, you know her name? Okay.
Yes,
and
Jess Stevenson, Gillette Stadium.
Okay, does anybody else come with you, Jess?
No.
Okay. So proceed, please.
Mike Ashby, Vice Chair, Stadium Advisory Committee.
So this application is for George Strait, the Cowboy Rides Away Tour. Just so that we're clear, this is a standalone country concert. This is not an application for the New England Country Music Festival. This event day is May 31st, which is the Saturday following Memorial Day. Ticket prices for this show range from $39.50 to $199. For this particular show, all of the seating is reserved. There is no pit, there is no GA admittance. Every ticket has an assigned seat. The proposed gate time is 5 p.m. and the proposed start time is 6 p.m. As with other concerts, we'll establish a public safety plan for parking lots closer to the date with Chief O'Leary, Chief Hatfield, and Lieutenant Stewart. This is a craft entertainment production, which is nice. We have a little bit more control over the messaging. We will send out pre-show communication via email with all of the public safety details that are necessary, parking lot information, and that typically goes out the Wednesday or the Thursday prior to the show. And the only really noteworthy thing for this show is that this is a very classic country artist. He draws a far older demographic than what we're typically used to for country shows at Gillette Stadium.
Okay, thank you. Please. Need to add Stadium Advisory, have anything to say?
We reviewed the application. We have recommended unanimously that it be approved. I think the school is still out in terms of what the audience is going to look like. It's something that we haven't dealt with before. They're saying it's going to be an older audience. The only comment I would make, which is a personal thing, not from the committee, is that the Country Fest has always been at the end of the summer, historically, and it's been a gathering of young folks before they go back to school. And I point this out that this is on the first Saturday after Memorial Day, which is when they're the first big weekend when they're all out of school. So whether they show up or not is a question. We have to wait and see.
Chief Hatfield, do you have anything to add?
This would be a level 5 detail, the detail template that you folks have on file, and pass that on to the Stadium Advisory Committee.
Okay, thank you. John, anything? Questions?
No, I'm all set, thanks.
Lorraine?
Thanks.
Ginny?
We had talked about the policy of if the concert goes beyond the end time. At this point, it says 11:30, and we were going to do a fine system. Have we done anything with that?
Yeah, well, that has to be approved at town meeting, and so what we did last year, the language is similar for this concert because this is being approved prior to the town meeting. So that language would be fine for this concert, and I spoke with Bill Caspara. It worked great last year. So if you approve the extension to 11:30, that'll be covered here. If it goes beyond the 11:30, that's when the fine structure would kick in.
Right, so is that part of the...
That's part of the agreement here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jim?
Yeah, no, I have no problem with the times of the event. Typically, we have the fire. There's nothing in here from the police and nothing from Board of Health.
The police chief is here, and believe he's reviewed it.
I dropped off a copy of a report in the Selectmen's office on Thursday.
So it should be part of whatever the packet is.
Okay. I don't see it in here, but just obviously the condition
Yeah.
in the
I have
Board of
an
Health
extra
as well.
copy of the report I can give you.
Just to discuss the matter, I attended the skating advisory committee held at the library. Listened to the presentation made by
I ask all the time.
Stevenson about the event. We have no problems with the particular event taking place.
Thank you.
It's a public hearing. Anybody want to be heard in this matter?
You want to pass that along?
Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Okay, I'll move that the Board of Selectmen approve the application
Oh,
for...
close the public hearing
Oh,
first,
sorry.
John, sorry.
I move that we close the public hearing.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, Joe?
Okay, I'll move that we approve the application for the George Strait Cowboy Rides Away Tour to be held at Gillette Stadium on May 31st. Starting time is 6 o'clock, gates open at 5 o'clock.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, we're gonna have to jump to another,
Pass that down, Jim.
for Ginny?
For Jim.
For Jim, that's for Jim. All right, that's all set. Do we
You
want
do
to,
action items?
yeah, John, you want to pick up on that?
Yep. Okay, the first action item is a gift to the Recreation Department. This came in from Debbie Giordano. The gift is 5 family passes to Patriots Skate. The value is $125 per pass, and the total value is $625. I don't know who the donor was. Oh, Patriot Place, okay. Okay, so I'll move that we accept the donation of $625 in kind donation for 5 family passes to Patriot Skate donated by Patriot Place.
Second that.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Next, please.
Okay, the second item is a gift acceptance to the board and the library. And the Board of Trustees request the Selectmen's approval of a gift to the library in the amount of $22.36 from the Foxborough Garden Club. So I'll move that the Board of Selectmen accept the gift of $22.36 from the Foxborough Garden Club, and thank you very much to them.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Third item is another gift to the library in the amount of $25, and I'll move that we accept the donation of $25 from Richard Plasmati and Mary Buckland of 5 Carmine Avenue, and $30 from the Friends of Boyden Library, and Peter and Carolyn Larson from Castleton-on-Hudson, New York, and to be deposited to the gift library gift fund in the memory of Neil Benson. Thank you very much.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Next.
This is a grant award acceptance, and I'll move that the Board of Selectmen accept the grant award acceptance. And this is the grant in the amount of $10,000. This is the state E911 training grant and EMD compliance. The other award is a $43,534 under the state E911 Department Support and Incentive Grant.
Second.
Discussion?
I think that this isn't the first year. Does Chief O'Leary want to say kind of a background to this? And I know you guys work hard to get these.
And as part of a program that the statewide E911 Center has developed, is to provide support to communities to help offset the cost of running the dispatch centers. And we have to go through a competitive process just to get the money allocated to the community, and then we use it to supplement the needs for the dispatch centers. of more importance is the training grant, because they've enhanced the requirements in terms of now in-service training for the dispatch staff, much like we have in-service training required for police officer staff.
Thank you.
Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Mark, I'd just like to recognize the chief for his efforts as we get other department heads who put the effort in. I like to just recognize their efforts on behalf of the town.
All right, thank you.
It's a lot of money.
John, next.
Okay, item number 5 is a request from the Lakeview Pavilion. They would like to request that Lakeview Pavilion, located at 45 Lakeview Road in Foxborough, be granted an earlier extension of their Saturday and Sunday liquor license from 12 o'clock noon to 11 o'clock a.m., from 12 to 11 o'clock a.m. This would enable them to serve alcohol beverages in conjunction with food service on occasions that a function would begin earlier than 12 o'clock noon. So I'll move that we accept the request from the Lakeview Pavilion as submitted.
Second.
Discussion?
When you mean approve, to accept the request, to approve it? Is that what you're
Yeah.
making a, okay. Have we done that before, from 12 to 11 on Sundays?
Only certain venues that come in for,
Patriot games.
For the
Well,
Patriots game
Yeah,
on
this
Sundays?
is for 2014.
this is for a whole
every
year.
Saturday and
Yeah.
Sunday.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, I knew there'd be some discussion on this.
It's been done in the past for different companies that have come in, and there's always been a rule that, food be served, and there were restrictions put on it. They have to, come before the board and make the request. It's not an automatic thing. And then it's up to the board to decide whether or not you want to grant that. I think they're looking for it because of, their ability to host a function like a wedding or something like that might start a little bit earlier. That's their request, that, it's not just typically done just because.
No, okay, I understand. I remember the discussions from other
Correct, yeah.
restaurants that have asked to go early on Sunday, regardless if they was selling food. And my recollection is, Sunday is 12, and it was a big deal to go 11 on a Sunday.
Unless it was a home Patriots game.
I think
That was the only
That
exception.
started at 1. The
It
home
started at
Patriots
1,
game
yeah.
that started at 1. Typically, somebody would come in with this request, would ask for a certain date due to a function day that we're having. So can we get some clarification on this? I think that would be beneficial to the board.
Yeah, because
Debbie?
this is requesting for 2014, that ends every Saturday and Sunday.
And then we're going to be flooded in here because we can't,
We just got finished signing all the licenses, and
Yeah.
there's 100 of them. So
Yeah.
if, I'm just being cognizant that you say one yes, and I'm not saying it's the right or wrong decision now, but there's going to be 99 following it.
I agree. So let's get some more clarification. They have some special dates in mind for that.
Sure.
Okay, John, next.
Okay, item number 7 is the annual renewal of liquor licenses for 2014. We have a long list. I don't even know how many there are, but there's got to be close to 60 anyway. I move that we approve the 2004 liquor licenses for the extended list, subject to confirmation by the town that all outstanding financial obligations are fulfilled.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
I think we squeeze one more in, John.
Item number 8 is a request from Sammy Robertson. The organization is Bailey's Team for Autism, and they're asking if they can have a run and family walk on Sunday, March 30th, 2014, starting at 10 o'clock in the morning. This, I believe it starts at the Guard Shack at Invencis, and I believe it ends at Waxy's.
Second.
Second?
Discussion?
Just, I know this is a very worthwhile event, and it's nice. This is the first year it's in Foxborough. In previous years, it's been in Dedham, so welcome to Foxborough.
And it's also the same route as the diabetes
Diabetes
in
run.
June, so.
Okay, all those in favor? All right. John, why don't we open the public hearing and then finish the action, because we only got 3 or 4 left, and that way we don't have to go back to it, okay?
We have to go back to the item
I
number
was just,
7.
I was gonna ask about that. That's included in your long list.
There's
It's the
separate
last.
entertainment licenses.
Okay, we can
Go back.
It's 21 Sunday entertainment licenses.
Okay.
So, but why don't you go to the,
We open the public
Yeah.
hearing, and then we'll finish the action.
okay.
Here's what's in the
I don't have one.
Do
Do you have an announcement? I don't have one.
I don't have
Yeah, hold on.
No, I don't see it.
No, there's just, you didn't get, there's just the thing.
Well, we
Got
can
the application.
just, yeah, because there's certain chapters of state law that have to be inquired here.
Anybody have a newspaper?
We'll probably bring it up online, read it from the newspaper. If someone's got a laptop.
Seen last week's report.
You have it?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I was missing the list of action items, too. I didn't have this list. Busy
It
world.
wasn't in my packet.
Yeah, that wasn't attached.
Give me that, the liquor license list again. Okay. Any luck?
Could be in the week before.
Okay, where's the agenda? I'm gonna sort of piece this one together.
Yeah.
Well, you gotta quote Mass General
No,
Law,
okay, is it the same as this?
alcohol. Okay.
No, I don't think it's the same.
No,
one.
it's not.
I don't think it's,
Is it in the office at Town Hall?
Yeah.
Maybe someone wants to take a...
Can somebody call?
That's George Strait, that's the one we had.
Can you get them?
Sandra could email it to us, and
Yeah.
apologize for the inconvenience. We're gonna go back to action while we wait for the public notice.
Robert, do you need something from town hall?
No.
No, you can just, okay. All right, John, wanna go back to action?
And 7?
Okay, number 7 is the annual approval of the Sunday entertainment licenses. So I'll make a motion that we approve the list of Sunday entertainment licenses as presented. Subject to satisfactory obligation, financial
financial.
obligations to the town.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Hackey's license, John?
Okay, item number 9 is a Hackney license application. The applicant's name is Wayne Robert Demers of 42 Main Street, Foxborough, Massachusetts. I move that we accept the Hackney license application submitted on behalf of Wayne Robert Demers.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Right?
And the last item is the Ponset Ave Pole 959-50 order adoption. This is submitted to the Board of Selectmen by the Massachusetts Electric Company requesting to erect and maintain poles and wires at Neponset Avenue, pole number 959-50. NGRID requests to install a new intermediate pole, 959-50, between existing poles 959 and 960 for the purpose of supporting a new electrical device needed for system improvements on our electrical grid. The proposed pole will be solely owned by National Grid. I move that we accept the petition for pole locations as submitted by Massachusetts Electric Company.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any luck, Bob?
Yes, I talked to Sandra, and she reminded me, I forgot, that this is just a change of manager, so for a change of manager, there is no public hearing on it.
Okay, great.
But normally they're done on an action item, but the board has requested they actually come in front of the board for this matter, so
Okay.
if you want to just call that again.
Okay, so the application to change the manager of all alcohol restaurant for 99 located 4 Fisher Street, Ronald M. Lima. Can everybody else come forward, please? There's nobody here.
This is working out well.
This is like, all right, well, we don't have anybody in front of us right now. Do you want to postpone this? Maybe the weather held them up, and we'll go on to another item?
Do you want to put it off from that?
Okay. Racino discussion, close enough to 7:45. What do you think? Okay. Mr. Gelman? Good evening.
I'm going to ask Alex to join me in our negotiation.
Just for the record, you could,
Sorry?
just for the record, name, address.
Sure. Alex Stolier.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Good evening.
Hi.
Okay. Dick, would you like to start?
Dick Elman, Town Council. As the board requested, I've met with Alex and with his colleague Dominic Longambardo. I came close to saying that correctly. Yes. We met last Friday to talk about the terms of a surrounding community agreement for the Plainville slot application. I've given the board, I take it you have it, the what I call a talking paper. You all have that? Okay. So I want to emphasize that this is just an outline of the discussion that Alex and I had last week, presenting it to the board for its consideration, although both Alex and I did agree that we would present this to our respective clients or employers, as the case may be, with our recommendation. Let me point out to you that before I start, and I'll go through each of these, that there's several items in here which I still need to further research with Human Services or with Chief O'Leary. Haven't done that yet, but I'll point that out as I go through it, and then, Mr. Chairman, if you want to interrupt with questions or at the end, it's up to you. The first, the essential difference in this agreement and those of other surrounding community agreements is, in this agreement I've asked for, and they've agreed that a fund to pay for the cost of the impacts that the town might see as a result of the Racino, and from either common theft, operating under, or the adverse social impacts that lead to costs for the town. For example, if people need more human services and we need to hire human service personnel, that those kinds of costs be offset by the operators of Plainville, and that the money for those anticipated, if they occur costs, be placed into an escrow fund. They've agreed to that concept. The amount of the escrow is not agreed upon. I've asked for $250,000, which I think is a reasonable amount, given the fact that the Racino Committee has quantified nearly $1 million in potential costs. I think that $250,000 in escrow is a reasonable amount. Penn National has thought a lower number, as you can see there, of $100,000. Let me emphasize that the escrow amount is just that. It's amount put in escrow. It does not limit the exposure of Penn National. So we should incur, in fact, quantifiable, identifiable costs as a result of the impact of the slot project. Whatever that number is, if we can quantify it and identify it, that's what they'll be responsible for. The $250,000 is money that's placed into a fund for easy, quick access. In the event we can quantify those costs, and I'll talk a little later on how that escrow will work. So I want to emphasize that whatever money is in the escrow, whether it's $100,000 or $250,000, it's just escrowed money. It's not a limitation on damages. As in most escrows, the parties that hold the escrows, and I have in mind it'll be someone from Penn National, someone from the town, that the money doesn't come out of escrow until certain conditions occur. And those conditions are set out in items beginning with number 3. So beginning with, and John, that goes to the point that you and I discussed the other day, beginning within 1 month, and I don't know if that's the right time. This is for the damage caused by problems of compulsive gambling. There's going to be a period of time when it becomes evident or not that people who live more proximate to gaming facilities are going to suffer more social, economic, family problems or not. I don't know if that occurs, but if that does occur and we can quantify it, from when it first manifests itself, and that may be as short as 1 month, but there's no, and it's periodically after that. There's no time limit, except I'll talk about this later, which that ends. But assuming within 1 month, our human services people go to Bob and say, look, I'm getting 15 calls a day now from where I didn't get them before. And it's people who they tell us that they can't resist gambling or whatever those impacts may be. We can, in that, quantify that. We can list them as, because this may be an illness, there's HIPAA health rules that might limit the disclosure of names, but nevertheless, we certainly can find a way to quantify that. We take that information to Alex in the first case, and we say, look, this is what's happening. This is what it's costing us. We can't wait a year to hire a human services additional personnel. We have to do it now. If they agree, the money comes right out of escrow, and we do it. If they disagree, we've set up a process to address that, and I'll get to that later. The same is true. The same process is true for operating under and theft as it relates to operations at Plainville. That's a much easier harm to identify because the chief knows where people are coming from when they're coming drunk, maybe where they're going to. I'm not sure about that, but certainly if there's theft, I think it's easy enough. I have to talk to Chief O'Leary about this. That's more easily quantifiable, and it's the same process. We quantify it. The chief says, look, I need another officer or 2 officers or whatever that has a number that's attributable to it, and we would go to the escrow for that, for those funds. But I want to emphasize this is a periodic, ongoing review. It's not something we do once and we're out. You keep looking at it. We did talk about an end date. That is, if after a year it's clear that there's been no cost harm to the town, then we would terminate the escrow. I don't know if the year is correct. I think the year, I don't know. I have to talk to the chief about what he thinks, and I have to talk to human services persons about what they think. It may take longer than a year to manifest social harm, but there'll be experts that can advise us on that. If we can quantify, if these harms do occur I have suggested, and they've asked, and I think it's reasonable, that the first place we would go to get the funds for this is that there is a mitigation, it's called a Community Mitigation Fund, that is being established by the Gaming Commission. The money for that comes from the gaming, it comes from successful applicants. That fund is in the legislation. It has not yet been established. The rules for accessing it have not yet been established. I talked today with the Ombudsman of the Gaming Commission about that, but that will be established and it will be funded. They will have rules in place, and that's where we would go first to see if that money is available. If it's not available, then we'll go to the escrow fund. Once we're in the escrow fund, then we'll present to Penn National the evidence that we have that their gaming operation has caused these costs to us, and this is the cost. If they concur with that, we simply take the money out of the escrow and put it into the services that we need to engage, and the escrow gets replenished. If they disagree with our position, we then talked about, well, how do you solve it? And I think we both agreed that we would then go to a neutral third party who could determine it as a matter of fact and conclusively. I did speak today with the Ombudsman about whether or not the Gaming Commission had a process for that or had some person they could identify for us. He said that hadn't been asked that before, didn't have an answer. Mr. Zambia?
Zambo.
Yeah, good, very responsive, intelligent, very good guy. So they'd look into us and let us know. But if it can't be the Gaming Commission, we can try and find some arbitrator who's got experience in these issues. And I don't want to wait for a court process. I want it to be quick because we have a need. I mean, the whole point of this is that if we have a need, we need to address that need quickly. It's not going to be in the town's budget to do so. We'll need the funds to get going. And so that would be that process. Beyond that sort of outline of the thing, there has been a template. I don't know if you've seen it. Penn National has entered into agreements with other surrounding communities. Changed, as I just described, we would use those agreements as sort of the template for going forward. There is the town will be happy to hear, there is a process for, particularly the town manager will be happy to hear that there is a process for reimbursement of fees and expenses incurred in the process. I spoke earlier this evening with Alex. He's agreed to participate in that process. And what that is that we submit together, the town and Penn National submit an authorization for reimbursement of these costs. We haven't talked about the amount, but we'll get that resolved, I'm sure. So that's an outline, only an outline. There's no, I made it clear to Penn National that I had no authority to any of these terms, that I'd have to bring them all back to the board. That's what I'm doing. You're not at all committed to this proposal, and we're open to change it to your comments.
Okay. John?
Just a few observations. One is I have read some materials over the years where the social problems from gambling, they start to appear after a year and probably are in full bloom by around 5 years. It seems like such a short period of time to make a judgment on whether or not this particular establishment has impacted the population. Secondly,
Johnny, are you saying that you may not see any impacts on social issues for 5 years?
no. You start to really begin to see it. It's hard to measure early because the establishment is so new. That's why you said it starts at a month.
Well,
does it end of the year?
It starts in a month. I think that's okay because
Yeah.
then we keep looking at it.
And that part's fine, but the ending at a year.
Yeah. So I guess my question is, if you know, if not, if we can find out.
No, like I said, I think you said it right. There are people who have expertise in this area, and I
But-
think it's worth
But
consulting.
the 1 year is clear to you that that's too short a time to close it
Right.
off.
And secondly, I think the escrow amount of even $250,000 seems low. You know, it's from the town's perspective, it would be better to have more in that fund, not knowing what sort of mitigation is going to be required.
You have in mind an amount?
It's a number, $400,000 would seem appropriate. But then again, there are experts, I think, that could give you a more definitive figure. I know that you said the Racine Committee said that $1 million was an appropriate number, but you know, what's the right number? Just in my own judgment, I think it's well more than the $250,000.
You all set, Jim?
Yep, thanks.
Thank you.
If I may, first of all, thank you guys for having me here tonight. It's look forward to working with you. To your first comment, Selectman, with the timing, I think the one thing we want to be careful of is the other competition that's going to be coming in. There will be a Boston area casino. There will be a Southeast Zone casino coming in, and our commitment is that we are 100% committed to mitigating the impacts that we have on the town and the residents of Foxborough. So in terms of the timing, we just want to be careful that it's done during that timeline when we are the only operation in play, so that the effects can be verifiably linked to our facility, and we're not mitigating for other facilities, which you would.
So your idea is that concentric circles will overlap.
They absolutely will, especially because the other casinos, our casino is going to be very, very, very small, very, very limited in terms of what the other casinos. If you've seen those proposals, they're going to have slots and table games. They're going to have thousands of slot machines, 100+ table games, hotels. I mean, they're going to be much grander, bigger projects than what we have. So there will definitely be a lot of overlap, a lot of market overlap.
I think what we could do about that is, as we talk to persons about the appropriate timeline, it may be in the process of dealing with these social problems, there's a discourse, I would think there is, between the social worker and the person harmed, and during that process, I would think you would be able to ask, what is it that's causing the problem? A, it's, I go to Plainridge, I can't help myself, or B, I go to Everett, and so I think we can find a way to word through that.
Okay, Joe?
I'm all set.
All right?
I shared the same concern, really hearing the 1 year point. I did attend one of the Plainville sessions where there was a report by a psychologist on some of the social impacts. And I recall that it happened over a period of time and then actually would taper off towards a 10-year point. So there was really a long-range look at it, but there was definite impact going on for many, many years before it tapered off. So that is a concern that I have. Just a general question, Dick. The Community Mitigation Fund with the Gaming Commission that you mentioned, I thought that fund was there in terms of if there were any issues identified after these agreements were developed and something that was not covered in the agreement with the entity, then the towns had the ability to go to this other mitigation fund for relief. But the expectation was that we were going to work out the basics with the entity.
The expectation is that we will be able to reach agreement with Penn National about the harm. If we do agree, we would go to the Community Mitigation Fund, and that's an annual, you make an annual application to that, if I'm answering the question that you're asking.
I thought it was two different things. I thought we would be dealing with the escrow account for impacts that happen directly to the town through our negotiation with the entity.
Only if we're unable to get those costs paid through the Community Mitigation Fund. So we would go first to see if we could get access to those funds. Keep in mind that those funds are paid for by them anyways, the Community Mitigation Funds. So we would go there first. If that fund is up and running and everybody agrees, that's where the money comes from. If it doesn't, then we would go to the escrow fund.
Procedurally, I thought it worked the other way, basically. Yeah. All right.
Anything else?
Just the other thing I would be interested in hearing more about is the actual measurement of, what would be the criteria to trigger these reliefs, so that, for example, if you're dealing with a community that's already overburdened from a social worker standpoint, it doesn't take a lot to tip that scale. Coming to an agreement as to what are those criteria, so that you don't end up having to go to arbitration on many things.
So the easier answer is in the crime area, but it would be the same principle. So if the chief right now needs one officer to deal with, I don't know the numbers, I'm just making these up, okay, 10 driving unders every day up in the vicinity of that facility, and that's it, he needs one officer for that. If the day this facility opens, that shoots up to 20, he needs another officer, so we can identify that. That's what we know what that costs. That's how that would be triggered. And the social services, again, assuming we have one full-time human services person in town who handles, 20 calls a day. If that person starts to get 30 calls a day and it's people having problems because of Plain Ridge, and that person needs help, more bodies, then that's how we would identify that. Let me also say that we have not, I did this talking paper for the board. We haven't started to draft the document. Inevitably, as you're drafting, problems reveal themselves, issues come up, it just happens as you go through the process. So this is sort of round one of our negotiation discussion. If this generally, conceptually is fine with the board, we would then start, I would draft an agreement based on the template, but that would result in other questions, other issues that would come back to you for your review and approval before this is done.
And I guess the last thing, there were a number of items identified through the Racino report.
Yes.
The committee report. And I know we're listing certain items here, OUI, theft, social impact, but there were other things mentioned, water, roads.
Yeah.
So, looking at this as it gets structured to make sure that we have all of those items covered, and
All right, so
there's a big difference between the 100,000 and what the Racino group was recommending.
So my instructions, as I understand them from the board and from the town manager, was to limit our negotiations to those issues that I mentioned to you. I will point out, however, that we are not executing a release for other things that may be harmful to the community as a result of this project. For example, I just make this up, their water detention system fails, our sewer system gets flooded, our water systems get flooded, whatever, something bad. That's not going to be released in this agreement. That'll be a harm that's actionable by the town. It just won't be something that we can trigger the escrow fund for. Okay, but Lorraine, to be clear, I purposely stayed away from seeking to include those in the escrow agreement because I understood that to be my instructions from the town.
I think at our last meeting, we had asked that you share the Racino information with the
He has a copy of the report.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
And it's been very helpful to me, and I used it for an initial, I thought that 250 was very reasonable, ultra reasonable, given the cost that they presented.
But
Alex didn't agree.
yeah, I mean, I thought it was being shared with the idea of updating what we had requested were going to be
Right,
the
but my
focus
understanding
points.
is, like on the water issue, I talked to Roger Hill, DP is not gonna let that, get affected by the project, especially the size that we're talking about. If they change the scope, and now there's gonna be a hotel and all that, they've gotta come back, and now that issue gets readdressed. There's a 40B that's being built right across the street that's gonna have more effect on water than a, 1,200 slot machine casino. And then as far as the traffic, there was limited on that, but there's language in the other surrounding community agreements that can be used to address the traffic issue as well. Am I correct on that, Dick?
Yeah, you are, and again, we're not releasing, discharging, waiving any of those issues. This agreement simply doesn't require an escrow for those potential harms.
All set?
Mhm.
Any rebuttal? Any questions?
No.
Ginny?
So what you've presented to us now is just in regard to the escrow accounts?
Yeah, it will be a portion of the surrounding community agreement. What I've highlighted are the provisions that aren't in what one might call the standard surrounding community agreement. So I think I've walked you through that agreement as it will be enhanced, I'd like to think, by the provisions outlined in this talking paper.
Because my concerns were also what was presented in the Racino Committee's report, and one of my big concerns was the water and the roads. I know, if the back roads start to become, shortcuts to the casino. I mean, looking at that causeway on Miramichi, it's very narrow. Something probably will have to be done at that point, but that's not what you are talking about right now in the escrow. Those would be addressed in the templates of the other surrounding community agreements? Roads, the road concerns?
No, only generically. So to be clear, all right, I did not discuss with Penn National roads and water. My instructions were not to do that, so I did not do that. If there is an impact on water, because this is true for any entity that causes harm to anybody else, and that's all that is, that if their project causes demonstrable harm to the town or to individuals in the town, that's actionable. But it won't be addressed in this agreement, except to the extent it's not going to be released.
What do you mean by released?
Well, we could, for example, say in this agreement, all we care about is social harm and theft, and we release and discharge you from any other claims. That's a release, which means that if those other ill effects occurred, we would not have the opportunity to do anything about it. That's a release. We're not doing that. Those are, if they occur, we can prove it, they're demonstrable, we're free to follow that.
And what did you say about the roads and the water situation?
Same thing. So if there is, water's easy to talk about. If we can show that their project is harming our water supply system, right? We can take action to do that outside of this agreement. This agreement doesn't talk to that.
But we don't have to put in the agreement, oh, by the way, we may have concerns in regard to roads and water.
No, well, there will be an agreement that the provisions that we've addressed don't discharge or release them from other claims we may have. That will be in the agreement.
Okay.
It's not, it will say it's not a release of other claims. Is that clear, Jenny? Is it?
No.
As clear as I can make it, huh?
Okay, all set? Jim?
Yeah, thanks, Dick, and thanks, Alex, for coming back. I did read the reports or the agreements that you had with Mansfield, Plainville, North Attleboro. Am I missing one?
Rentham.
And it's a little bit different on each community. So you look at Plainville, they're looking at things, they commissioned a report, and they use that as the basis of the judgment of what the impacts are going to be. So there's concern about housing and bringing in workers and what does that do to the school system. over at King Philip and Rentham, they're concerned with that. North Attleboro is concerned about intersections and traffic. Mansfield, interestingly enough, is concerned about business, how the venues that you have or may have at Penn National would conflict with the businesses that they may have at Great Woods. So there's kind of a synergy that you will not do this if they're doing that, and there may be some working back and forth. So, we commissioned a study from our side to say what the potential impacts could be, and nobody knows because obviously it's not built yet. So I would expect some type of a hybrid for a little bit of the items that are in the other communities, because I can see, and again, what I keep going back to is the Plainville Commission study that says, look, we all gamble, we all have gambling in our community to a certain percentage, whether it's scratch tickets or bingo parlors. And then there's a concentric circle that goes around, and certainly Plainville's in it, and certainly Foxborough is in it. So whatever our level of gambling is now is going to increase with some type of a slot parlor there. So how do you find what that increase is going to be? So it would be using resources like Vicki Lowe, who's the director of the Human Services and Council on Aging. I'm not so much interested in the number right now because I just don't know what it is, but the thought process of taking a snapshot of how how Foxborough is with those issues that are addressed in the report in 2013, and what it can be if there's a way to measure it in 2015, 2020, 2030, because this is, if it's going to be permitted, it's here for probably longer than we're going to be around in this town. It's going to grow. So having safeguards in Foxborough to address it 10 years from now, because that's what the Gambling Commission envisioned with these intermunicipal contracts and agreements, that there is going to be impact and there is going to be an effect for these type of establishments. So unfortunately, we don't have the luxury of doing this in private session. I mean, you're our counsel and you're our chief negotiator, so in general terms, I think that's probably all I want to say. If we have an opportunity to meet separately or through the chair to share other ideas, but unfortunately we're not on the other side of the table listening to their position and their negotiation skills and strategies. So I think just generally I'd like to see a little bit of the other stuff that's in the other towns recognized in our agreement, not for 60 days or a year, but for longer periods of time, and there's safeguards that whoever's sitting at this table 10 years from now is not trying to scratch their heads and saying, why, this thing is so huge, why didn't we address it now, generally?
Jim, is it appropriate for me to call you and I can do that?
Yeah.
Just a couple points to that. You're right. With the other towns, they each had very specific requests as we drilled down on those things, and that's what was addressed in the surrounding community agreements. The host community agreement with the town of Plainville is separate. It's a host community agreement. I would caution that should not be used as a template for a surrounding community agreement, as it wasn't anywhere else. I mean, it's a whole different agreement. You may disagree with that.
Yeah,
but
I'm not picking that up and saying use this as a template, but I know, speaking to the town manager over there and sitting on some of the planning board discussions, they spent a lot of time trying to find the best consultants, and they weren't local, to say, okay, if you bring a gambling institute into the town, this is what you can expect, and it doesn't stop at the border. So I think their concerns to draft their agreement is similar to the concerns that we may expect in Foxborough. That's all I'm saying, is their agreement aside.
fair point. And what I want to point out is the approach we've taken with all of the surrounding communities, and the approach we're taking with Foxborough as well, is that to the extent that we have verifiable impacts on your town, then we will mitigate for that. That is what we believe is our responsibility to cover, to the extent that it's also not covered through the state community mitigation funds that obviously we pay into one way or another. So I'm not clear when you say there's going to be an increase in gaming in Foxborough. Yes, I hope there is. I mean, for us to have a successful venture, there's going to be an increase in gaming all around here. But that's not something that we're going to be compensating for or mitigating for. What we're going to be mitigating for is an increase in problem gaming that results in, additional burden being placed on your social services centers. and that can be verified, that can be documented, and that can be quantified. And that's what we're working for in the agreement.
Okay, I understand that, and I think, and we kind of talked about this before, a lot of this is anticipated, it may or may not happen, but when a developer comes in on a separate project and they say, okay, we're going to drop this development or build this development, and we're going to project water use, and we're going to project trip generations, and we're going to project visual lighting impacts to neighbors, it goes through a process, and you say, okay, your level of service at this intersection is A. In the future, it's going to go to C based on industry standards. So we're not going to wait 3 years to see if that intersection fails. The developer comes to the table and says, we're going to fix that intersection, we're going to put turning radiuses, or we're going to put money into an account where you do it yourself. So that allows the town to understand it right up front. Versus, I think what you're proposing with the this agreement is let's study it later, and if this car's coming down South Street, good luck trying to figure out where it's coming from. Is it coming from the 40B that just got built? Is it coming from Lowe's? Is it coming from your establishment? So we're chasing our tails year after year trying to find out what the problem is rather than addressing it up front, and I think that's what my concern is.
Wait, Jim, I think I understood that, and that's what I believe this agreement does, is that within a day of when it opens, if there's a police problem, we can address it. I say within a month only because I didn't think it would manifest sooner, but if I'm told by Human Services they'll know like that, then that's when we'll address it, and continue to address it as it occurs. So it's unlike the other agreements where you do have to wait the year, take a look back. That is not what this agreement does.
Okay.
Thank you. Set? Does anybody, go ahead.
Could we get copies of the other surrounding town agreements?
I have those, yes. I'll send them to you.
Okay,
Yeah, they're all available online as well on the Gaming Commission's website.
okay, thank you.
Sure.
Dick, so I just wanted to ask a question about, you'd mentioned, so anything, we're not releasing them from any potential harm that's not covered by this, but
Yes.
the way we would have to do that would be through a lawsuit, is that correct?
Well,
So, to me,
not necessarily. I mean, if there's harm, and a lot of projects like this would recognize it, and you wouldn't necessarily have to get into litigation.
okay. I think I'm kind of jumping onto the point that Jim was making, that I feel like if these things were included in the agreement, then we know up front that we have an understanding that these things will be addressed, as opposed to trying to chase after them outside of the agreement.
Are you suggesting that the escrow be funded to meet potential costs such as water? Is that what you're asking?
The items that were in the Racino report,
Well,
And-
if the board wants me to do that, I will. I did not.
that's what I'm curious, because I felt like we were submitting that to Bob for you to review, to incorporate into the negotiation.
If I may ask a question.
That's what I thought too.
Go ahead. You all set?
No, I mean, that was when we got the final Racino report, I was under the impression it was gonna be given to you, and those were also our concerns, that those concerns would be considered when we were doing.
Ginny, it was given to me along with instructions not to go beyond the two items that I addressed.
Once again, the board's changed its mind.
No, I think, we had that discussion, and that, I supplied him with that report, but my understanding that the main focus was the social concerns. Yes, we thought maybe there'd be a little bit of traffic issue, well aware of the water issue, talked to Dick about it. I had a major discussion with Roger Hill. He's really not concerned about the water issue. So I talked to Dick about the main focus of what I'm hearing from the board is the social impacts. So that's why he was doing monies based on the social impacts. But he's reviewing the other surrounding community agreements, and there are pieces that he could take on the traffic that will address that. But the money part of it was based on the social impacts.
All right. Would you like to, Alex?
I'm sorry, I just keep hearing about this Racino report. I'm just wondering, is that a public report?
Yes.
Is that something,
Yes.
can I get a copy of that?
Absolutely.
We'll swap later.
I'll send it to you along with the signed agreement.
Fantastic.
Okay.
I just think it's important to get our concerns like on the table. I mean, just so 7, 8 years down the road, we can say, well, you know what, we were concerned about this. The town of Foxborough was concerned about.
Yeah, that's fine, Jenny. I'll do exactly that. The agreement will identify our concerns and make it clear that there are concerns. We want to see what happens. And if there is harm caused by any of these, we expect to be made whole for that. I can do that. It just won't, we're not going to escrow $1 million for a potential water problem, okay?
Yeah, I understand that.
Okay, so we certainly can do that.
Anybody in the audience wish to be heard in this matter? Seeing none. Okay. Dick, let me know if I get off subject here. I just want to ask a few questions. I don't know, I think they're relative, but if they go astray, let me know. First of all, thank you for coming back. Our first meeting didn't go so well.
I thought it went great.
Not me. I mean, at that point in time, you were saying, revisit it, revisit it, revisit it. And I'm glad we're coming to some kind of, negotiation here for the bestest for the communities, all the communities. My question is, there's been a petition that was signed by thousands of people to put it on the ballot to vote on the Racino Casino issue on, to be exact, House Bill, what's the name? I forget, it's been a while.
Expanded gaming.
Yeah, it's got a House Bill number on it. Obviously, you're in the gambling industry. It's a huge gamble.
Gaming industry.
Gaming, yes. If the state votes to repeal it or goes for it, either way, I think it's going to be on the ballot in 014. Is that a concern of yours? I mean, does that play into?
I can't sit here and pretend to be a Massachusetts legal scholar. I'll defer to counsel here, but as I understand it, the state attorney general has some issues with that bill. Again, just from what I read. In short, the answer is no, that's not a concern for us. We believe that gaming is coming to Massachusetts, that the process is happening, and we hope to be a part of it.
Okay, I just wondered if it was a constant. I mean, if I was an investor trying to put some money into, building somewhere in a assiduous circumstance, I'd be very concerned. I would think that if it ends up on the ballot in 2014, that all this could be for the last 2.5 years for no reason at all. And I'm sure you're taking a great risk, your company, in investing. I mean, just for you to come from Pennsylvania, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a lot of money. A lot of people investing time, design, money. I just wondered if it was a concern. That's all. Any other questions from the board?
I think if I could just summarize where I'm coming from. When the developments, the big developments that I've been involved with, I like nothing better when the planning board and the town say, all right, we'll come back and we'll study it in 5 years. Well, we'd say to the town, we'll study it in 5 years, because we never get invited back to the table to study things in 5 years. There's different planning boards, there's different selectmen. So now's the opportunity to figure this out and not rely on studying something 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now. Because I'll tell you, it's just not going to happen. We may have new town management, new selectmen, new frame of thought, and we've moved on to other issues. So use the opportunity now to get whatever we can in writing. And I'm not saying just a dollar amount, but the checks and balances, and figure it out now and not wait till a year from now or 5 years from now.
Okay, well said.
To that point, Mark, just some clarification. I think, as far as dollar amount, John expressed his concern that, 100 was not enough, 250 was not enough, that he thought it was more like 400. I think Dick's looking for some direction from the board on that figure. So I don't know if there's a consensus from the group about numbers, so that he can go back and work with Alex toward a final number.
Well, I mean, we had a committee that looked at it, and they spent a lot of time, and I'm sure they reached out to the department heads and the police chiefs and the fire chiefs and the water department, and that's a starting point. And I know, recently there was a community that threw out a number of 600,000 and said, that's too small. So I don't know, if it's $1 million or $1. I mean, that's what we relied on our committee of volunteers to work for a long time on.
But you're the decision makers, and you have to make a decision
Why
on a
wouldn't,
agreement.
why wouldn't we hire a special, not exactly special counsel, but consultants that would be experts on this, that have worked on it in other communities and other states, that would analyze this for us and take the casino committee's report in, our concerns, people that are experts. I thought there was funding available from the state gambling bill that was for the towns to be able to deal with this.
Mark, to be clear, I did read the Racino report, and I've looked at their numbers. The escrow, I want to make sure the board understands that the escrow amount is not the limitation on the amount of damages that we can recover. It's a fund in place to allow a rapid, in my world, rapid is years, no, to a relatively quick access to a fund. If we have to go to the Gaming Commission and they have a lengthy process and it's going to take forever, and it's clear that we've got harm, we've got an escrow amount ready to go, and that's the purpose of that. So it doesn't limit our damages. It just provides a fund that we can get at relatively quickly if we need it, and it gets replenished. In other words, if it's clear to Alex, and we all agree, and it's obvious that we need a police officer up there all the time where the road comes into Foxborough, and that's going to cost us with overtime and whatever benefits, $80,000 a year. Then we take $80,000 a year. We can't get it from the Commonwealth Fund because it hasn't been established. It's not for that. We take $80,000 a year, and it's not a one-time cost. I think that's what you're getting to, Jim. Mm-hmm. It's $80,000 a year. So we would take $80,000 out of that escrow account. It would be replenished. So don't think of it as a limitation. Think of it as the availability of a fund to get to quickly. Jim, I concur with you entirely. I looked at this issue as I would be drafting a development agreement for a community. So you look at the impacts, you draft a development agreement, you get the mitigation that you think you're going to need, and you get it up front, you do it right away. And that's how that's what I told Alex when we were talking. I look at this as a development agreement, and that's the way I negotiated it.
And just, if I may, one thing, a couple of you are describing, a process where let's hire the consultants, let's have them figure out what it is so we know how much should be in there. The problem is that's a lot easier said than done. I will tell you that there's a lot of different consultants out there, and we get a lot of different results, and a lot of times this is more art than science. We have done our impact studies, so we're not just guessing. We have hired firms to do impact studies on our facility, and they have determined that we will have no impact on surrounding community of Foxborough. Okay, that's their in their estimation. Now you might get a consultant that says something different, and what we're doing is we're avoiding that back and forth. We're not going to have, well, our consultant says this, your consultant says that. What do we do? We're saying we're gonna look at the actual impacts, whether it's a day later, a month later, a year later, whatever time frame. We're open to that, but in whatever time frame you can establish a documented, verifiable impact, then we will mitigate for that, whether it's through the escrow fund, whether it's through outside of the escrow fund. That's the commitment that we're making. And it would be great if we could agree on numbers ahead of time, but we're just not going to. So it's going to be based on actual results. And that's how it is with all of the communities.
If anybody has anything to add, send it to Dick individually, and don't share with the other board members. Dick will be in touch. We're going to move on.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, going back to the application to change the manager for all alcohol restaurant at the 99, is anybody here for that? Seeing none, does the board want to?
I went back and called Sandra, and he was asked to appear, so I don't know if there was some intervening event that prevented him from being here, but she said we could just put it on till the next meeting.
Okay, there's no timeline situation? Hopefully everything went well for that gentleman tonight, so. Okay, now will be the next. All right, Cindy, you want to come forward? You and Bob want to discuss merit pay program?
Just wanted to update you. You had asked us to go back and look at the merit pay program to see what suggestions we would have for this going forward. Cindy and I went over as a starting point to Easton because it was understood that they actually had a merit pay system. As it turned out, they had originally had one many years ago. It was if I'm characterizing it wrong, Cindy, just let me know. But my understanding from meeting with their town manager and his assistant that it was really not a success and that it was voted out because it didn't work well. So they don't have that currently. And we talked with, Cindy reached out to a bunch of communities. We have a list that I have here of 10, and I believe you got a couple more during the day today, Cindy. Is that true?
Yeah, I added them to
You
this
added them
list.
to this. So essentially, all the ones that we've talked to, none of them have a step program, I mean, a merit program. They all have some form of a step, similar to what we had prior to today.
Yep.
But with the idea that there was some performance review involved with it. And if you look at our personnel bylaw, we do have a performance review that just never really has been used to evaluate employees and to determine whether or not they should be moved from one step to the next. So I reviewed documents from Barnstable. I was down there last week. We heard from Mansfield, Weymouth, Braintree, Easton, Framingham, Fall River, Brockton. They're all essentially step systems with a performance review basis. So I believe that Cindy and I are on the same wavelength in that we should stick with a step basis, performance review. We should adopt what we started, a performance evaluation program. We already have forms in place. The department heads and division heads would have specific goals and objectives, which I've already had them do for this particular year in anticipation that we would go to some performance-based evaluation system, whether it was a merit or a step basis, and that they would be reviewed based on that. And if they had a poor performance or they were being disciplined for whatever reason, then movement to the next step would be at risk. Otherwise, they would be considered for a step increase the following year. So that would be my recommendation. I believe that Cindy concurs. If she wants to give her point of view, that's fine too.
I concur. Right, I think you need to have a review system in place, which we did build, and we do have the forms. We can change them, tweak them, do whatever we need to do, but a favorable review definitely needs to be part of this process. It shouldn't just be an automatic thing.
Questions, John?
Yeah, Bob and Cindy, have we adopted any of the merit pay program or pieces of it that would have to be reversed in order to go to that system?
It had, in my memory, none of it had been incorporated into the personnel bylaw, and at some point, whatever system we come up with should be part of that personnel bylaw. The performance base is already in there, but we didn't have the goals and objectives. We didn't have the particular forms.
Right.
That all can be incorporated, and I believe it could be done and ready for the May town meeting.
Oh, absolutely. It's mostly there anyway.
Okay.
Right?
So, Cindy, for the personnel wage bylaw, would you be changing any of the language in there to reflect what happens when someone doesn't meet standards? Is that?
Oh, yes.
And would that apply to all staff or just management? Or
It would be all staff. I mean,
all staff.
I think the only real difference would be department and division heads would have goals and objectives for the majority of their weighted average, let's call it. But people below division head, anyone below a division head, would utilize the forms similar to the ones we created to discuss different areas and you know, even if things need improvement, as long as it wasn't a disciplinary issue or, you know, just consistent poor behavior, absenteeism problems, whatever those things are. And there's places for that on all the forms.
Okay. And so, right now, effective July 1st, all employees have received the 1.25% on their base salary?
All eligible employees, yes.
Okay. The only ones not eligible are the contract.
Well, there was
No,
some
just
contract
kinda,
that
you
some
know.
were hired after the fact, so
It's a
they
little
wouldn't
mismatch.
qualify.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a mix of all little scenarios like that.
Okay. So, do we know, we had budgeted like about $50,000?
Mhm.
Do you know what the balance is on that?
I don't have it in front of me, but I think it was probably, off the top of my head, I think it was about 6,000 or 5,000 under, but don't hold me to that.
Okay. I mean, maybe we can,
If you could email the board
yeah.
that stat,
Oh, sure.
that'd be great.
information.
I'd be happy to do that.
Thank you.
Ginny?
So what we're doing, you're proposing, Bob, is that, instead we eliminate the merit portion of this
We already did.
whole pay
yeah.
plan? So that's, we don't even use the word merit anymore?
Right,
That would be my recommendation, yeah.
right. I would recommend that.
And
as
we'd
well.
already put it on the kibosh
Yeah.
months ago.
So is that generally going, we're not really going back to the old system?
Pretty much,
Well,
we
it
are.
is, but it's a little, it takes a little
We're gonna
more
take it-
steps,
We're
more.
gonna take advantage of the bylaw that gives them, you know, a review. That
Right.
wasn't being done
Right.
before.
To Lorraine's point, there already is language that says that you get your step based upon your performance and also your supervisor recommending it.
Right,
So we would just, tweak that language, make it a little stronger. And we would incorporate goals and objectives and things. But part of
Right.
that is already there. It just
Right.
needs to be
Is this now,
tweaked.
is this now more in line with what Easton is doing now?
correct.
yes.
Yeah,
Okay. And they had been through the 10 years of, so.
yes.
So, yeah,
Yeah,
I think this is a good thing.
Jan?
So if we're shooting for May town meeting, I'm looking, this is a management decision. We're interviewing for a brand-new town manager, and he's gonna be stuck, for better words, with our decision, and it may be a good one or maybe a bad one. We're gonna be interviewing for the December through January, and hopefully getting somebody on board beginning of February. Is that what our schedule is?
I think
If all
that's
goes
probably
well.
pretty fast, because they'll
Mid-February.
have to do, if the screening committee finishes their work before Christmas, then they have to do the background checks. And then
So
we have
probably
to have
closer
our
to the end of
process of
February.
what we're gonna do in terms of, that's something that, at a future meeting, I wanted to talk to you about,
Mhm.
how to work with whatever the final candidates are who come forward, because thinking in terms of having them have a meeting with department heads, even prior to our interview,
Sure,
so
okay.
that they get a feel of,
So I just hate to set a course and have a new town manager says, that's the wrong way to do it, or I can do it better, I've done it this way. The caveat being, we've got town employees that are kinda stuck in the middle right now, and it's not
Right.
fair to them.
They've been there for a little while.
They've been there for a little while,
Couple years.
so do we risk
well,
going?
everyone's pay was just, the scales were just adjusted a year ago, so everyone's at the right place. Everyone just got the 1 1/4 on their base pay July 1, so I think we're caught up. And maybe, I see your point, though,
Mm.
I think maybe we just say hold on doing any further tweaking until that can be
Well,
evaluated by a
we
new
get
town
February,
manager.
so, March and
Yeah.
April to have this a priority when a town manager
Yeah.
comes in. But
Well, the process is already starting because we're submitting budget documents now. The process will have already started
Yep.
before the new town manager comes in. If he has a strong, he or she has she always yells at me for this,
Mhm.
a strong feeling either way about it, there will be time, there'll be a couple of months, because the personnel bylaw and that number is always massaged at the last minute.
Yep.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, Jim, this
I-
is
I
more of a
believe-
traditional municipal plan.
Oh, yeah,
Just the
I
added level of
understand, yeah.
accountability.
Yep.
So even if a new town manager came in, I don't think it would be totally foreign to that person. To hold off, we've been battling this for a while, and I think it's wise to, head down this road and bring some stability to the system.
Yeah, I mean, and the stability is good, but I think what was enticing about the last plan was, look, if you do a good job, you get rewarded. If you don't get rewarded. A lot of this stuff goes out when you do the step, and there's pieces of it, but I just don't want to go back to the old way.
Well, provided
because
that the
new way
goals and
didn't work.
objectives and the reviews are done correctly.
Right,
Yeah.
and that would require education with the rollout. Not that that's difficult, but, it does need to be consistent and tangible things that people are measured upon. And I know it's not just as easy as changing the bylaw. I would need to meet with all the non-union staff, be inclusive, have that discussion, see what it is that they have to say about it. So the window is not as great as it may appear to be able to do all of that. People in several different buildings and different schedules and things like that. So I just don't want it to appear that we're excluding them from the process of the bylaws that they have.
Yeah, and I just don't want to rush into something that, if it sounds like, we get some forms we can tweak and we can get the process going, and we lose an opportunity to do it the right way. That's all I'm saying. And it may be the right way, but it just seems, I don't know what it seems. It was a bad experience over the last year.
Yep.
A nice way of putting it.
Yeah, very bad.
Yeah, and also, the new town manager is going to be dealing with existing conditions in the town of Foxborough. We can't delay everything for the new town manager. You know, I mean, and this is something that really has been simmering for a very long time. You know, so I mean, I feel comfortable with your, with this approach.
Okay, you need a vote of the board, or you just need?
We just needed some direction, so it seems like you're all in agreement that we move in this direction.
Okay, let's move on to the gift policy. Who wants to start, Bob or somebody?
I'll start with that as well. I know there's been some concern about how gift reporting is done by boards, committees, employees in town departments. So I started working with Cindy on this. We were meeting with particular individuals to discuss, how they should report certain things to the board, because, that your board is the board that accepts the gifts for the town. You have a policy in place. But there were some ambiguities when Cindy and I started to look into it. And just as an example, it was right around the time of the health fair, and it became apparent to Cindy that, geez, even at the health fair, the vendors provide gifts and things like that. It's not stuff that's ever been reported to your board and accepted by your board. So I think there's a range of what has been done in the past, and we just want to get some direction from you so that we report it out to the department heads, the boards and committees appropriately. You're getting a range of what happens. Tonight you approved something for the library at $22.36, and then other boards don't understand that they need to report. So I just want some direction. Even here it says, no gift shall be accepted by a town employee in excess of current limits established by MGL 268A, which is, the conflict of interest. And everybody understands that's been doing this long enough that you can't accept anything over $50. So that's really more particular to a town employee and not gifts. My understanding of the gift policy is something that's donated to a board or to a committee for their use in their day-to-day operations, and that should be reported to you and accepted to you. Another thing that comes up a lot, we're seeing, we saw when there was the storms and stuff, a lot of companies donated a lot of different things, never got before your board, was accepted. We need to have one policy, and it's got to be the same for every board and committee, and it's got to be put out there clearly, and I don't think that's ever been done. You had this, that's fine, but there are some just ambiguities, and we should know what a dollar amount is, whether it applies just to money or to services, those kind of things. And then Cindy and I can put that out, make it clear. You know, I saw, you know, the letters that we saw today were good, they were specific. You know, maybe it needs to state where the gift comes from, you know, the amount, what it's being used for. But do you want to, for instance, get a letter for a $22.36 gift?
Anything over $50.
Okay, because that's not
Just-
clearly
No,
stated
I
in
think it's-
here.
No, I think it's important to have.
Can I make a suggestion?
Sure.
I mean, I went back to the policy that was sent to us this afternoon from 2001.
Yeah,
And I don't know if people even knew about it, or I think there was confusion from, you know, I haven't read it from 2001. And then you prepared a new one, which seems like you and Cindy, a lot of the same stuff from
well,
the
this
old
is
one.
actually a policy that exists, that's your policy.
We didn't
So-
create this.
So the 2001 superseded this one.
No, this superseded 2001. 2001 was done when John Kraus was the finance director.
Yep.
And this incorporates a lot of the same information.
Okay.
I don't know when this was done, though.
So it's kind of a level of responsibility. If department heads understand the state regulations on gifts over 50, you know, in-kind services, there's already this information there. Under 268, anything under $50, there's a form that they fill out, and it's, you know, name of employee, title, position, agency, what's the amount, the organization that's giving, the date that you want to accept it, and there's the same thing for over 50. So rather than getting all the letters that they're nice letters, they can accompany this, but have the department head take the responsibility that said, I as a department head went through this, quantified it, qualified, I sign off, and I stand by it, and it's my reputation on it. And that covers both under 50 and over 50, and they can put a cover letter and send it to us. I think that's standard for everyone, and everyone has the same form, you can get them easily. I think the problem still is when you have an event, and I'll use the recreation department because they have a Halloween parade and people want to donate candy. You're not going to get it to the selectmen 2 weeks in advance, and then the time we get approve it, it's Christmas time.
Well, that was one of the other things I was going to
Right.
raise,
Yeah.
because that's what we're running into a lot.
Yep.
Right.
They have a Saturday event and someone donates something to them on Tuesday, and you're not meeting for another 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Did they
It
not
doesn't do
accept?
anyone good.
Did they not accept the donation?
Yep. So if these forms are filled out and then submitted to the selectmen, signed off by the department head, they're responsible for it. So when it gets to our table and there's something out of line, we have the right to refuse it. It may be after the fact, but it doesn't hold anybody up, and the accountability is still with the department head. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, because according to the, this policy that we have, any donation or gift has to be reported to the finance director within 48 hours. So if you get something on Tuesday for a Saturday event, well, you've got Tuesday and Wednesday.
Right.
That's all right for the
Yeah.
reporting, but that doesn't mean,
He's gonna pick up
I
on
know,
it.
but at least it's on
yeah.
the record.
Yeah.
Some
Which
people
is,
show up day of, and they're like, oh,
Just,
yeah.
just fill
Yeah.
out the application and submit it. You don't have an
because
issue.
the whole thing is putting it on the record.
Right.
That's
Accountability and,
complying with the law.
right.
All right, so I think,
Makes sense.
yeah, I get a sense, Cindy and I can
Yeah.
prepare a form that they can submit every time they get something.
Yeah. Can you just reference, I mean, it's
You know.
the 268A form. It's already done.
But
Is it-
I think that's more relative to individual gifts to people
Can
rather
Okay.
than, I think that's what it's for.
I make a suggestion?
Sure.
When I was running my husband's business, whenever we had a process, we wound up doing forms. And what I did is, I took the liberty of just incorporating everything that was in the selectmen's policy and putting it, it's just fill in the blanks.
Okay,
And if you want to look at this, and I made copies for everybody, and it's very easy, it's just fill in the blanks. And then it tells you what you have, the information you need,
Right.
where it has to go.
can you send it to me electronically,
Yeah,
Jenny? And
I'll do
then,
that also.
you know,
Does anybody want a copy of this? You got one for the record? Okay.
no, this is great, thank you.
Can we just make one change where it says reporting requirements? The recipient must deliver the gift itself to the treasurer within 48 hours. If someone donates the porta potties, things like
Well,
that,
I
I
mean,
can't
you know,
imagine bringing them into the treasurer office.
Yeah, but that comes right from the policy, so
Well, you get the paperwork.
Huh?
You do the paper.
You get the
Not
paper,
the
not
toilet
the potty.
paperwork, the
Yeah,
real
exactly.
paper, the document paperwork.
I get worms. I mean, I don't get worms. I get worms donated.
Yeah, you have what?
All right, moving on.
Okay,
said
thank
she
you.
All right, thank you. Okay, 8:45, we'll have a Splitsville discussion. Bob, you want to start this?
We had a meeting yesterday with the craft group, John, myself, Dick Gelman,
Dick, could you come forward, please, at the table?
and we met with Mr. Cobry, who was here, Brian Early, who I believe is here.
Would you gentlemen like to come forward? Are you comfortable where you are?
Dan Murphy was there as well, and Jonathan Kraft made an appearance at the beginning of the meeting, and he, made a presentation to, John specifically. We appreciate, him attending. I think the meeting was productive in the sense that the first half of the meeting, it went for 2 hours. I think the first half of the meeting was a overall discussion about how we could better improve the communications between the craft group and the town of Foxborough. And then the other part was some discussion about the Splitsville project. And, I think John wanted to report, what he viewed from that meeting.
Yeah, again, thanks to Jonathan Kraft. He really started the meeting off, and he gave an overview of the property from 1989 to present, and he actually showed the substantial improvements to the property and the value that was generated up on Route 1. That was actually pretty nice. We then talked about communications, and the fact that you can never over-communicate. And, we look back on the past summer and how the Splitsville project came to the Board of Selectmen, and there was probably some opportunities to over-communicate on that. There were probably some omissions. It came to us, somewhat unfinished, and we didn't have a whole lot of time to vet it. But, this is just some observations on the communications. We did talk about, the conversation naturally gravitated to Splitsville. And we did talk about, the applicant's position. And, from the Board of Selectmen, I tried to, explain the position that we voted on. It was productive. We didn't come away with any deal. We didn't come away with any anything really different, other than they did ask if I would give it some thought today, and I was up at 3 o'clock in the morning thinking about this. So if I look tired, it's because I didn't really sleep about it. Then this afternoon at 1 o'clock, Dick Gellerman, Bob Cutler, and I did have a conference call on the phone where we started to talk about some possible scenarios. And these scenarios, I didn't want to make entirely on my own. I needed input from the rest of the board. So I talked to Dick about the possibility of, a strategy session going into executive session to talk about these particular scenarios.
Right, John, and because there is pending litigation involving the license application, and because the discussion that I anticipate we're going to have might affect the town's position in that litigation, I think it appropriate that we do have that discussion in executive session.
So that, some folks did ask why only I went, and Mark didn't go as well. And, originally, we made a motion that both of us would go up and talk to all parties. And this actually goes back about a year ago when a similar approach was attempted. And it turns out, and this is one of the downsides of the open meeting law, is that last year it was discussed, and actually it was vetted with the Attorney General, that 2 selectmen going to a meeting like this would constitute a subcommittee, which is not allowed under the open meeting law. You know, and to be fair, it's frustrating as hell to try to work with only one representative going from the Board of Selectmen. And, but it's the realities of the open meeting law. We're doing our best to live within it and not to violate it. So this was the guidance given to us by our attorney.
Okay, thank you. Dick, anything you want to add to that?
No, I don't know if Jim wants to address the board or not. I think John presented clearly exactly what happened. I think it was productive. It was good for John to meet the people he met. There is a great deal, I mean, it's not a newsflash, there's a great deal of distrust both ways between the stadium, NPS, and the town. None of it caused by anybody here, I would add. So there's a lot of work to do to get over that so that we can address issues that come before us, that will continue to come before us, at least with an understanding that the person we're talking to is honest and open. And we've got a ways to go on that, but it was a productive meeting. I hope we can build on it.
And do you concur with John that you did have a decision about a year ago on?
Yeah, I mean, it's very nuanced, Mark, and thank you for agreeing to step down from going to that. I think we could have proceeded with 2. I think it was safer with 1. The issue is whether or not the 2 constituted a subcommittee of the Board of Selectmen. There are nuances, and the Attorney General's judgment at that time was it's probably best not to do that. I'm sure that's how the AG would feel about it now. I don't think that's an issue anymore. You were kind enough to step down, and so I think that was the safest way to go. I think we could have done it both ways.
Right. Well, that's, I just want to make that clear to the people, because I know this board voted to have me and John go.
Right.
And then that became awry from a decision from over a year ago. And I wanted to not impede the process of having the discussions. So basically I asked Dick to just go with John. And me and Dick and Bob had this conference call in Bob's office. And I said, Dick, go with John at this point in time, and then we'll get some more clarification on that law. So, because it's going to happen again where 2 of us would want to go to meet with a certain venue, whether it's a craft group or somebody else's group. We need to have some clarification on that from the AG's office. But I didn't want you to slow this process down, but I still want you to look into that so that we can have absolute clarification moving forward.
Mark, and I'm happy to do that, but when I say nuance, it matters, for example, who appoints this group. It matters, for example, what authority they're given. All of those issues are important to that decision, and rather than, you're right, rather than spend all the time and delay this process trying to address all of that, you did the smart thing, so you stepped down.
Lorraine, do you have any questions? Oh, James, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, under the topic of communication, I'm at a loss right now. We sat here and talked about, on a 5-0 vote, that 2 people were going to go meet, and we're very specific with the Splitsville people, because I sensed a sense of urgency. At what point were the decisions made that it couldn't have come back to the board for more discussion on that? We met last week. I left that meeting 2 weeks ago with the understanding that we were going to reach out to the Splitsville. It happened yesterday for 1 hour after 2 weeks, and I'm hearing it now that it wasn't the right thing to do this week. But the previous week, we had 3 selectmen meeting independently and together on the same topic.
I understand.
No, I'm not looking for a pause, but, you know, if I'm gonna make a motion,
I don't
and five
understand.
people said, yeah, that's a good idea, and then it was in the paper on Thursday, so it must have been communicated on Wednesday that the plan changed. You met with the craft organization on the Splitsville topic. Then Ginny and Lorraine met separately on the Splitsville topic. It was okay then to do it, but when there's a consensus of the board on a 5-0 vote to say, let's reach out, we'll spend 2 weeks and try to negotiate something in good faith. I'm finding 2 weeks later that we met yesterday for 1 hour.
2 hours.
1 hour on trying to talk about communication and 1 hour on Splitsville, and Splitsville wasn't even there. So, you know, when I make a motion and 5 people say, yes, we're gonna do that, and 2 weeks later it's not done, you know, let's talk about that, because,
On the
you know,
Wednesday after that, it was brought to my attention by Bob and Mr. Gellerman that there was a meeting, not a meeting, a decision rendered from October 26th or somewhere around that time of last year, when Lorraine and I wanted to meet with the craft group about further expansion. And that Dick had rendered a decision.
so can I
that
just
time-
ask you this? So Dick, how did you came to the board, you came to Mark and said you can't do that, or did someone go to you?
Someone came to me, Jim, I did not go to the board. The
Okay.
concern
Was it-
was raised to me, I think I talked to Bob about it, that
So did Mark, did you raise the concern?
No.
So who raised the concern? Was it,
That would be me.
so you went to the attorney with a concern the day after?
She actually came to me,
Okay.
and then another member of the board came to me. I raised it with Dick. Initially, Dick thought that, you know, we still could do the 2. When 2 people raised it, we talked to Mark about it. He decided rather than impede the process, we keep the process moving along, which we did.
So that was on
Wednesday morning.
So we met for the first time yesterday afternoon, 2 weeks later?
Well, that's, I would imagine had to do with scheduling, because at the first initial meeting was gonna be between me and John at 4 o'clock on Thursday with Dick, Bob, and something. I bowed out, and you guys tell me what happened after.
No,
Okay, so-
Bob was down the Cape and couldn't make it back.
Okay, so we
Okay.
met last Tuesday. Okay, we had a public meeting last Tuesday. Could that not have been discussed at that meeting a week after?
Last Tuesday?
Last Tuesday, we
It would
met.
have had
We
to
a
have
special
been, it would
meeting.
have had to
Had
have
been
been placed
posted.
on an agenda,
Yeah.
and this did not come up
It
till
came
after
up
the...
Wednesday.
It came up after the agenda was set.
The agenda was set on,
It was Thanksgiving
Thursday?
week, right?
It was Thanksgiving week.
Thanksgiving week, that's why. I was just thinking.
so 2 people can't meet. And I mean, this is, I went to the websites, I did all the research that I could today, and there's nothing in there that I could find anywhere when you have a committee of 5 people that 2 people can't meet, as long as they don't come back and deliberate back and forth.
Right,
Correct.
Jim, the issue is whether or not the group that's composed and consists of 2 or 5, whether that group is a subcommittee, therefore subject to the open meeting law. That issue turns on who appoints the persons to this subcommittee. It matters whether it's the selectmen appointing the persons or the manager.
Okay.
The issue is, what's the authority that subcommittee is given? Is it given the authority to make decisions, or is it simply fact-finding? That matters. So there's nuances involved in that. When I was presented with the concern, I thought and said and think that we could have done it, we could have had to in a way that was not violative of the open meeting law. It's an issue. Mark said, we don't need these problems now. You want to impede these negotiations. It's fine. I mean, that's.
But I just don't see where it raised to the level that it was a problem that we had to deal with. And that's what I'm trying to figure out, because there's going to be a time, it might be next week, where we're going to say, look, you know, we only have this on the agenda for 10 minutes. Can one person go meet and 2 people meet? And now I'm finding out we can't do that, but I haven't found that anywhere.
No,
and I haven't found it being raised by the public, by the applicant, by the craft organization, by you, by the town manager, by the chairman. It's one person bringing it up, and we just wasted 2 weeks. And we still haven't met with Splitsville.
Jim, this was something that was covered last year when Mark and I were trying, as Dick mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
And so,
So
in
when
our
it was
discussions
when it
about
was
that,
raised
when I
at this
raised it
table.
when I raised it with Dick at the table, and
No,
no
I'm
one
talking about
remembered it,
But the vote, so that was before, a
Right.
few hours before.
Right.
When I made that motion to say, let's get together with Splitsville, and I calculated in my mind, I'm thinking there was several against the petition, the application, there was several for it. Mark is the chairman who was for it, John who was opposed to it. Let's get those two, it kind of balances it out, let's move forward, meet with Splitsville and kind of go back and forth, and then come back to the table. I made that motion, there was some discussion, every single person raised their hand,
that's right,
including you.
that's right.
So the next day, you go to the town manager, and 2 weeks later, we're having this argument.
It's not an argument. The next day, I
Yep.
went back and checked my notes because I asked the question, you were there.
No outbursts.
I asked the question, you were there.
Yep.
This was already established to be a problem in that
No,
format.
you raised the question, and the council said it wasn't a problem in his opinion.
So
before
I-
before the
but I
meeting that we raised
remembered
it.
I went back
Then
and
if you-
checked my notes. I went back and checked my notes, and I immediately brought it to the town manager's attention to prevent us from being in the position of violating open meeting law.
So at the
So I
table,
don't
when you
understand what
vote,
your issue is.
because you raised your hand and you were all for it,
Well, because I had to go and validate what had already been opined upon. But for some reason, we had a different opinion. So I went and got the information, presented it to the town manager, and he and Dick addressed it. I think that
Okay,
this
and-
worked
and-
very well because it protected the town from a potential open meeting law
I look at it
violation.
as 2 weeks later, we're not closer to where we were before.
It's
Jim,
an
we
open
we
meeting law
were
violation
exactly
that we
where we
avoided.
would be whether we had 2 people or 1 person, because we wouldn't have reported back until today. It wasn't on last week's agenda. The week before was a holiday week. The agenda was set and published Tuesday or Wednesday the week before. We're exactly where we would have been if we had 2 people or 1 person, whether we met last Thursday, which was the first time that everybody could get together, or we met yesterday. We're in the exact same spot.
I guess my broader issue is, when there's a board vote, it seems like it's circumvented by going to the town manager, to the attorney, and then to the chairman. So next time I make a vote and I don't agree with it, I'll be calling the town manager and I'll go to the council, and this is exactly what we talked about a year ago and 2 years ago. Same thing that we brought up before. If you've got business to do it at the table. If you're uncomfortable with it, then it would have been a 4-1 vote. Or you can abstain because you said, I'm uncomfortable about it. I knew you knew what the issue was, but you still voted for it, and we talked about it an hour earlier.
Because I wasn't sure after hearing what Dick said inside there, I knew I had to go and check and
Well,
see if
then-
it was the same issue.
Then
So I did
that's
what I thought was the right thing, which was go to the town manager to avoid an open meeting law violation and have it reviewed again to determine that
I
there
just-
would have been
I-
2 people attending if it
And
hadn't
there
been
was
a
2 people
problem.
attending the week before.
But if it hadn't been a problem, 2 people would have attended that meeting, Jim. So it was established that it was going to be a potential problem, and I believe that Dick Mark
We're going,
did the right
I
thing.
completely disagree. We're going to be going back and forth. But the whole process of going around and then back to the table with no discussion. We met last week. We could have discussed it. You could have made some type of a, other than finding it out tonight. And it's just, I just don't like doing business that way.
maybe the best thing, if it was ever to happen again, that the town manager should send out a communication to all.
It's
I
getting,
don't know what
the
else to say.
conversation is good. It needs to be said. Because we've had multiple meetings where we met with Jim Cobrey and Bob. Was it Kevin Pecos at the time?
Yes.
And you attended with me. And that wasn't a vote of the board to do that. I just invited you as the vice chair.
Right.
Is that the difference, Dick?
Well, there's lots of differences, and we don't have time to go into every single nuance. As Dick said, it depends on who appoints the committee, what the purpose of the committee is, if you're actually voting to do business or you're just fact-finding. I think the difference in this particular case was we were there on a fact-finding mission so that we can move this process along. So I probably agree with Dick that two people wouldn't have violated, but the better practice so that we don't get into a problem, we've already had open meeting violation sent against the board through this process. The better practice was not to get into that situation. Mark made that decision as the chair. We agreed. He was the bigger man and stepped out of it because it would have been him going, but he wanted to avoid that whole problem. So we avoided the problem. We did the best we could under the circumstances. We could not have gotten on last Tuesday's meeting because the meeting had been posted. It was the holiday week. There was no time to do it. That would have been an open meeting law violation if we talked about it last week.
So moving forward, when, I think what Jim's saying, if you have to have a discussion, correct me if I'm wrong, once you vote at the board, if you have a difference of agreement with the board, no matter who it is, you bring it back on the next agenda in front of the whole board and keep it open, transparent that way. Now, my question is, since we have Splitsville out here, I promised people could talk. We're kind of ahead on the agenda here. As much as it's only 9 o'clock, we've already done all the action, so we got 15 minutes to spare in my eyes.
We've got two executive session.
Go get a coffee. I'm kidding. What's the determination, John? What have you come forward with? Is there
Well,
something
like
you
I
need to
said-
have another discussion on with Splitsville? Are
Well,
they
like I
gonna
said,
meet with you?
we had a meeting today at 1 o'clock, me, Dick, and Bob. Dick presented some scenarios that I think are worth, it would require a strategy session that everyone would need input to. And, you know, I suggested that to Dick, and Dick agreed that these scenarios are material. There's possibilities around them. And I said, rather than just me knowing them, I thought it was important for the entire board to hear them. But it would require a strategy session
Executive
to
session,
vet
yeah.
these out.
Okay. All right, so we're going to move on from that. I promised some people they could speak on this topic. And I want demeanor. I want good demeanor, I'm telling you. I will stop anything that gets evasive. Thank you.
Very good. Debbie Stewart, 44 Naponton Heights Ave.
Mark, before we get into this, we just for purpose of time, limit them to a couple minutes apiece.
Yeah,
'cause
yeah. How many
we're
people?
really supposed to be going into executive session.
And you
right
know,
now.
it is couple of minutes apiece, please. If you do have something in writing, please submit it for the record. Okay.
Okay. I want to be very clear and very upfront about this. I am speaking on my own behalf. I am not speaking for the group. This is my own personal opinion. I want to go back to the fact that we read it in the paper on Thursday that John was going and you weren't going. I'm glad that you admitted to something that you did. But I'm very confused. I don't know if Dick can explain it to me, but I'm very confused about how you and Ginny, even though Ginny didn't do anything when she went with you, and Randy went the same day that Mark met with the craft group at his home because his kid was sick. And you go and take Ginny with you and Randy, who was in the meeting in the morning, from what I understand, and you tried to negotiate. That is not an open meeting violation?
I don't, Mark, it's not your position to respond to that. We
That's
responded
fine.
to the open meeting violation.
Bob, I'm
Yep.
just giving my opinion,
Okay.
okay? I'm just putting it out there. The bottom line is, they weren't going to negotiate. They were going on a fact-finding mission to go and talk about Splitsville, not about anything else that John wanted to talk about up there. It was Splitsville.
It was actually, hear me
The
out.
way,
It
Mark,
was-
46
Mark,
minutes,
you
Mark,
can't
hold
even
on.
respond to this because
It's an agenda item.
But
not the open meeting law violation. You can't
And I'm
respond
not
to it.
responding to that.
I'm not
I'm
talking
not gonna
about that
respond
right
to the
now.
open
I'm
meeting law.
talking at
I'm
46
not,
minutes.
listen, you gotta listen.
Yes, I will, Mark.
We, to my recollection, at that last, when we voted, Jim's motion to go was to have not just a discussion on Splitsville, but to open communication, they were both on the table. That's my recollection. I could be wrong, but that's what I'm saying.
Actually-
I went back and looked at
Sean?
the tape,
Actually,
and at 46.
you
the
saw me
minute-
amend that motion.
No, you didn't amend the motion. You looked down at Jim afterwards and said the craft group. Because I went
No,
back
I
and I
amended
watched
the motion.
tape. At .46 minutes into the tape, Jim made the motion and said Splitsville. He said afterwards, oh, in the craft group.
Well, they go together.
Everybody in this room that watched it, I was home watching it, everybody thought that there was going to be a fact-finding mission. And if I remember correctly, and you can have, gloat all you want, I'm not finished.
I went up there and
You are
said,
not
I'm
gonna
going
talk
to go
over me.
talk.
You are not gonna talk over me.
Stop.
Steve,
Mark, if I
Stop.
might, I don't know how this is productive to us
it is
proceeding towards going into a session to have a discussion.
It's not,
Can I just say, I'm gonna say one more thing. The perception now in the community is that there is something really, really wrong here. And that's just not my perception.
okay.
Something is wrong when you read it in the paper and Jim says he doesn't know anything about it. There's something drastically, drastically wrong.
Okay, thank you. Next, please.
I'm not gonna say open meeting violations anymore.
No
All right,
MLG, ML,
okay.
MLV.
Basically, what I think some of the disappointment, I'm one of the people of this group that got people to sign and explain to them what was going on. And what we asked the board to do was to reconsider and to find more facts. And that's what I believe the motion was about. You know, and then we find out, we wanna know the facts too, so we reached out to Splitsville and got information from them. And then we also find out that, I mean, has everybody, I don't know, this was sent to Bob, I don't know, does everybody know that both Mark and John were invited to go down? I don't know if you have that.
And that's against the law.
Okay.
So, and
But-
I did not respond to that email because there's no way I would respond to that. And that entity should know better than they cannot pay me to go visit an establishment or John or any other board member in another community, another state.
But
In my
But
opinion.
you wouldn't even
But when
respond,
you
we're sorry,
put,
we can't
no,
do that? There's just no
I
response?
told the town manager that I would not go.
Okay.
And now I'm gonna tell you one other thing. If we weren't walking around on eggshells 24/7, trying to decipher the open meeting law, constantly being battered with it, we might be a little bit more relaxed about making a decision where I can go with him. But when you're battered with it 24/7, I'm stepping away.
I will give you that, because you are putting a hot seat up there, so I will.
So I'm gonna step away and let John go, because I have faith that John will go and then report back to the door, which he's gonna do, in 2 minutes. As soon as we can go into this thing, he will do that, and he will tell us what's going on, and then we can move the process forward. The
Okay.
process is being started so that we can move forward to maybe having reconsideration.
Okay.
And on that recommendation,
What you need to know is just the disappointment is we worked hard to get people to prove to you that there was merit to this, and that you should maybe just get some more facts. We didn't ask you just to change your mind. Matter of fact, I think John quoted exactly what I said. There are more facts. It isn't 75-25% food and alcohol. When you put the two establishments together, that's gonna change. And the only reason, and you guys wouldn't know that, if you don't work in that type of business. But that's where it was like, can you get together with Splitsville and Howl at the Moon, and of course probably the craft group, because they're the one asking for it, you know? And then we find out, never mind this, if you don't wanna go down to Florida and visit, that's fine. But Splitsville was not even asked to get together and offer information. We just want you to know, that's why we're disappointed, you know?
well, that's what happens. The process gets slowed down when all communication has to go through attorneys. It's like a bad divorce. Next, if anybody.
Okay.
Do you have a copy of that letter? I didn't even know that letter
I wasn't
existed.
sending it around.
Well, it was sent to Bob, but it was.
Okay,
it was
anybody else
invited.
wish to speak? Okay, I'll entertain a motion for executive session.
Motion to go into executive session.
Have to read the reason.
All right.
Mark, is it the board's intent to come back into open session afterwards?
Possibly,
Yeah.
possibly.
She says it. So you will at
One-
least come back into open session to announce whether or not you're going to have any further open meeting discussions tonight.
I think we can do that.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry. but
Okay, I'll move that we go into an executive session with Attorney Richard Yellman and Attorney David DeLuca to discuss the Splitsville matter, as well as to meet with Attorney Doug Lewison and Attorney John Davis to discuss the Weldon and Dutton case.
Roll, second?
Second.
And just,
And that you will return into open session.
And we'll return to open session and
the conclusion of
deal with
exec-
any matters that we can deal with.
okay, second by Lorraine. All's in favor?
Yes.
Roll call, Jim? Jenny?
Yes.
Yeah,
Lorraine?
yes.
John?
Yes.
Mark, yes. Okay, we'll get there, back to you as soon as possible. Thank you. I have my watch. So I have my watch. No,
She missed a couple signatures.
All set, Frank? Thank you. Good evening, everybody. We're back. It's roughly 10:48. We are going to put on the agenda for the 7th of January, a discussion on Splitsville in open session with the Kraft Group. John and Attorney Gelman and Mr. Cutler will continue to have some talks with them between now and then, and see if they can come back with some conditions or changes that are palatable to the board to reconsider. And then the board will make that decision that night, I imagine, whether or not we will. And I think that covers it, Dick? Okay. Okay. Thank you all. Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All's in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.